Okay, hi everyone. This is Dan Barry from the Modeling Analysis Predictions and Projections Program and the Climate Program Office, and I want to thank you for joining the webinar today to hear about the program and the FY19 call for proposals that was released last week on the 9th. We're going to, in this webinar, cover a variety of information. We're going to start out with Anna Rita, who's going to talk about the program and what we do in general and the context for this funding opportunity, and then we're going to hear from Emily Reed, who's going to talk about a recent survey that we did of our funded investigators and some of the things that we found from that to give you an idea of what it's like to be funded by MAPP and the types of things that you'll experience as a MAPP investigator, some of the additional things we do as a program. And then I'll talk a little bit about the funding opportunities themselves at the end. We'll go through the information sheets and talk about the proposal and letter of intent process. So I'm going to hand it over to Anna Rita, who's on the line, to start with the discussion of the program background.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. So Emily, can you share the, I don't see the first slide. Can you advance the slide for me? Okay, great. So hi everyone again. This is Anna Rita Mariotti. I lead the MAPP program, and it's a pleasure to tell you about our program. So can you go forward next, Emily? Next. Next. So our role in NOAA, so the MAPP program is under the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, that's OAR, and specifically under the Climate Program Office, CPO. And the Climate Program Office has three major research areas: climate observing and monitoring, informing decisions, that's a socio-economic type of research, and understanding and modeling. That's done under the Earth System Science and Modeling Division. This includes three programs, and MAPP is one of these three programs. It's a competitive grants program to strengthen the nation's capability to understand and predict natural variability and changes in Earth's climate system. Next. So the program really, we think, plays a crucial role in enabling the nation to prepare for challenges such as droughts, extreme heat, flooding, and changing sea levels. And it does that by supporting research and transition of this research into applications and engagement activities that really focus on the development, integration, and application of Earth system models and analysis for climate. And our work builds on process-level understanding from other Climate Program Office programs under our division and also other agencies. And it develops modeling that's really at the basis for a range of Climate Program Office activities. For example, the National Climate Assessment, NIDIS, that's a National Integrated Drought Information System, and WISA work. And the aim of the MAPP program is to extend research that's done internally at NOAA in the OAR laboratories, and then help to provide coordination and leadership for climate modeling. Next. So we do this by working with many good partners, and this is just a slide to give you a sense of who we've worked with in the past few years. We have very good partners that have worked with us to co-fund activities for several $1 million a year. For example, the NIDIS program I already mentioned. In other line offices, we have National Weather Service and National Marine Fisheries Service with whom we work to fund activities, DOE, NASA, and the Navy. We've also worked with partners to coordinate activities funded within other agencies or programs to optimize the outcomes of our investments for NOAA. So we have coordinated with activities that are done internally at OAR laboratories or other NOAA centers, for instance, with NCEP under the Weather Service for activities under the Climate Test Bed, or coordinated with other agencies as part of programs such as the U.S. Global Change Research Program, or U.S. CLIVR, or the National Earth System Prediction Capability Program. We've also coordinated with international programs that work under the World Climate Research Program and the World Weather Research Program. Next. Our beneficiaries, are the NOAA line offices and their stakeholders that really benefit from what we can do by augmenting and complementing internal research capabilities. And more broadly, we also work with third-party organizations to do this. Next. MAPP directly benefits also the institutions and scientists that are directly involved in climate modeling, research and development at NOAA, in academia and other agencies. And this schematic just gives you a sense of the MAPP program footprint in the national community that deals with this. So in 2017 alone, MAPP had 28 recipient institutions across 17 different states. Next. All the work that MAPP does is mission-driven research. So we really have the NOAA mission, at the center, at the forefront of whatever we do. And the majority of the research that we support comes through federal funding opportunities, such as the one we'll be discussing later in this webinar. This is a way to competitively select the best ideas from the scientific community at large in support of NOAA's mission. And our grant competitions have funded both research and also transition of research into applications that supports the advancement of NOAA services. And we follow the NOAA research and development funnel. So business model, if you're familiar with this, where you have the more general research and development all the way down into the operational system development implementation. We are somewhere, starting somewhere where the mission-oriented research starts, and also the work that's done in the test bed, so the testing of new systems for operational capabilities and applications. Next. So we've worked quite hard to complement the funding that's out there with engagement and communication and coordination activities to really enhance the outcomes of the NOAA investments in MAPP. And some of these activities are summarized in this slide. So we have a webinar series which has been running for 7 years, I believe, which allows investigators to present the work to the broad community, and also entertains presentations from the broad community to inform future activities. We have organized, together with PIs, relevant community meetings, and also we have a program newsletter, a quarterly newsletter that people can receive by subscribing through our website. It's free to anyone, and this allows people to keep in touch with the program, understand what the recent research findings are, accomplishments or events, and for example, federal funding opportunities if the timing is right. We also organize a group of PIs that we fund in things that we call task forces, and these are really a platform for communication and collaboration between our PIs, and also serve as a network of expertise on NOAA, on different topics. Next. So these are traditionally our research focus areas, those that we have had since 2011. So climate prediction, climate analysis and monitoring, climate earth system modeling, drought and other modeling applications, and climate projections. Next. And in each of these areas, we have organized task forces, as I said before. These are coordinated sort of groups that are really build on the competitions we have and focus on a particular topic of a grant competition. So, for example, we currently have a subseasonal prediction task force. We've had climate analysis task force and a climate model development task force. We currently have a task force focusing on drought that is in its third cycle, and we have a new task force on marine prediction. And we also have an effort on model diagnostics to accelerate model development. Next. This is a timeline, 2011, 2018, basically just to give you a sense of select accomplishments by the program. By no means a comprehensive one, but you can see here accomplishments that relate to drought. So both fundamental research understanding why droughts occur and whether they are predictable, all the way to new drought monitoring tools, drought prediction tools. And then there are reports and accomplishments that relate to understanding climate projections based on CMIP, on models, and how these have informed the development of the climate science special report that recently came out in 2017. You also see the development and operational implementation of the North American Multi-Model Ensemble and NME, which became a dual-purpose platform for both operations and research in 2016. And also several sort of items that relate to transition of research into weather service new operational tools. Most recently, a new tool for week 3, week 4 forecasts that came through the climate testbed. So this is just really to give you a general sense of the work. Next. Our program by the numbers, we engage about 100 investigators annually in 80+ projects. In the past, we've had about 300 publications a year. PIs have organized several special issues or collections in peer-reviewed journals. We have had several transitions of research into operations and applications each year. As I mentioned before, we have sustained communication outreach activity, which includes a webinar series now in 7th year and a quarterly newsletter. All this is available through our website for everyone to access. And we have numerous community reports from MAPP organized workshops and other activities that are also available through our website and inform NOAA activities. Next. I think this was my last slide. Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Emily. She's going to tell you about the experience of the MAPP investigators and also the feedback that we recently received through a survey that we administered.
Yeah, I'm just going to, this is Dan. I'm just going to interject really quickly. If folks have questions along the way, please use the chat feature in WebEx. I think on most screens, it should be the little question bubble in the center bottom of your screen. If you click that, it'll open the chat window on the right-hand side, and you can send us a question. And feel free to send questions as we go along or at the end of the webinar when we get to the Q&A section.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm the MAPP Program Assistant. I'll be talking a little bit about what's involved with being a MAPP PI and some feedback we received from PIs who have received our funding in the past. So we do have some standard requirements while being a MAPP PI, such as submitting annual and final reports, but there are also many opportunities for PIs to share accomplishments, not just with us, but with a larger audience. And the first opportunity is our webinar series, like Anrita mentioned, and speakers are typically both PIs and also experts on that particular webinar topic. So it's a great way to connect with the broader community. And the task forces were also created to promote communication between PIs who are working on similar topics. And this is an outlet for PIs to present to each other, as well as receive feedback on their progress. Many of our PIs and program managers lead sessions or give talks at community meetings and conferences. And we also gather some particularly interesting research highlights and include them in our newsletter that's sent out quarterly, and we also post on climate.gov. We sent out a survey back in January just to gather some feedback from our PIs about our program and what MAPP funding means to them. And we surveyed over 40 external PIs and 15 NOAA PIs. And as you can see, our external PIs are a mix of early, mid, and late career scientists, while our NOAA PIs are pretty much mid and late career. So we have a wide range of scientists that receive our funding. And this mix of different career levels really allows for more experienced scientists to provide guidance to younger scientists. It also creates opportunities for new ideas to flow, especially into the NOAA community. The mix also potentially helps to develop future workforce of NOAA by getting the younger external community and workforce involved in NOAA-relevant projects. One of the big benefits of our program is that NOAA scientists have the opportunity to collaborate and work with the external community. So this slide shows feedback from PIs within NOAA only that work on MAPP projects. And we asked them what the benefits are from collaborating with the external community. And the first 3 points are on the theme of the external community constantly brings in new ideas that can help shed some light on difficult research questions. And oftentimes by design, the research calls are looking for projects with a diversity of expertise. And Dan's going to talk a little bit later about our climate process team competition that has a specific team diversity component. Other PIs said that collaborations enable interdisciplinary teams and reinvigorates NOAA's internal talent. And having this diverse pool of people can really expand the base capabilities of NOAA's labs and collaboration centers, but also pushes the boundaries of NOAA's mission. And the 2 quotes at the bottom just highlight these points that it's important to have diverse expertise and that we are pushing NOAA's boundaries with the research that we're funding. As mentioned earlier, our task force involves a lot of community engagement, such as task forces, webinars, and other workshop-type meetings. And a large majority of our PIs, both NOAA and external, either found these activities to be extremely beneficial, which was the highest option we gave in our survey, or very beneficial, which was the second highest option. And many stated that these activities helped with communication of their own projects, as well as providing a connection between research and NOAA products. The activities also provided an outlet for some early career scientists to take on leadership roles. For instance, early career scientist Libby Barnes in Colorado has been doing a great job helping to lead our S2S task force. And we do also have some postdocs and PhD students that are invited to listen to the task force calls and webinars and potentially give talks on funded projects. Our results and the last quote at the bottom emphasizes that NOAA PIs overwhelmingly indicate the value of our task forces and value the regular communication with the external community. We'll go into details about the proposal review process a little bit later, but our funding is given out based on a competitive review process where panels of experts are reviewing research proposals and giving feedback to help determine the proposals with the most merit. And it's somewhat of a lengthy process, but it helps to ensure that the research is funded thoughtfully and chosen through expert deliberation. And our feedback indicates that investigators are largely appreciative of the fact that we do competitive research process, and even though it might be a little bit slower than some non-competitive methods. Both PIs, external and internal at NOAA, found this to be extremely valuable or very valuable. One PI said that it helps to ensure a fair process, the best science, and community support. And this piece of feedback is really encouraging because these are MAPP's motivations for using a competitive process. So it's great to see that our PIs support that. The PIs also value feedback they receive from the panels, and we give this out to people who submit proposals regardless of whether they end up receiving funding or not. So I'll wrap this section up with one last quote from a NOAA PI who said, "MAPP allows collaboration between government and academic science, allowing the work to focus on real problems but with broad expertise." And the results I share today are just a small portion of our survey, and the rest of the results can be found in our new technical report that's on our website, and there's a short link to our report section on the screen for you.
Great, thanks, Emily. Okay, this is Dan. I'm going to go through the competitions now. You can go to the next slide. We have 2 competitions this year in fiscal year 19, and they were released on August 9th, last week. We have a couple of major deadlines, which is the first thing that I want to cover. The letters of intent are due on September 10th, and full applications are due on November 20th. And we'll talk a little bit here about what the competitions are looking for, as well as the process to send us letters of intent and to submit full proposals and applications. We ask that your proposals only target one competition, so please don't try to target elements across both of the competitions, and you should definitely be clear about which one you're targeting. Next slide, please. So the first competition, as Emily alluded to, is on climate process teams. And the focus of this climate process team competition is on land processes and land modeling in particular. And there's been, as some background, some discussion over the last couple of years about the climate process team model and a feeling that it's historically been a really valuable way to do targeted advances in modeling systems and prediction systems. And so building on that, both the MAPP program and also the Climate Variability and Predictability program at CPO are soliciting climate process team proposals for this coming year. The CVP call is separate and focused on a different set of processes, but the MAPP call is focused on land processes and land modeling. And I want to just take a moment and read the CLIVAR definition of climate process teams, because I think that kind of sums up and informs what we're looking for as a whole here. So the definition says that CPTs are multi-institutional projects that assemble observation-oriented experimentalists, process modelers, process diagnosticians, theoreticians, and climate model developers from 2 or more modeling centers into a single project that focuses on a specific process or set of processes to assess model sensitivities to process uncertainties, establish observation and model metrics, and develop, test, and implement parameterization improvements. So I think that's a nice bit of background about the concept and gives a sense of the general boundary conditions of what we're looking for here. There are a few requirements that are called out in the information sheet. So first of all, this is a call that we are, as the MAPP program, doing in partnership with the Department of Energy program that's managed by Renew Joseph. So we're looking for land-oriented proposals that include collaborations with NOAA, OAR laboratories, as well as Department of Energy laboratories, and other U.S. modeling centers are welcome as well. The teams should involve academic and or private sector scientists as key members of the team, and that includes leadership of the teams. There should be a clear demonstration in the proposal of the usefulness of the research to improving NOAA and DOE modeling systems as the interested funding agencies. And also, of course, if other centers are involved, there should be, clear description of the utility of the project to advancing those modeling systems. As per the CLIVAR definition of CPTs, the teams should be pretty diverse and include a variety of different individuals from different fields. It should be interdisciplinary. And they should focus on processes or interactions where significant progress can be made over the period of the project. So the CPTs should be based on significant theoretical underpinning research that indicates that an advance in the model description of the land surface or a significant advance in the model description of the land surface and performance of the models in that area can be made over the course of the project. There's a little bit more detail in the information sheet, so I encourage folks to really consult with that and look at the details that are in there. And I'll briefly highlight some of those. There's more information in here about the types of processes to focus on, and it kind of fleshes out this last bullet point under the requirements in terms of the relevance of the process, the readiness of it to be significantly improved in climate modeling systems. The focus of the project, so it shouldn't be on advancing the entirety of a land surface model, but on particular targeted problems within that within that area. And model independence, so it would be great if the work can be relevant to multiple centers and potentially portable as much as possible. We suggest that it would be a good design feature of proposals to include plans for visiting scientists. So this could be scientists from academic institutions visiting the laboratories or vice versa, and to think about organizational activities like workshops or meetings, or how you're going to bring the team together to work on the problem and manage the problem effectively over the course of the project. There are some examples of processes in the information sheet. They're not binding, but kind of help you to think about some of the areas that you might target. So things like land and planetary boundary layer processes and interactions, the impact of land use and land management, and feedbacks on the land surface and simulation fidelity, and a variety of other processes in there. A key part of CPTs, as I've mentioned, is the use of observational data, so that's encouraged in the information sheet to bring both remote and in situ sources, including new sources of data, into the work. And it's also encouraged that teams think about how to work with and integrate within some of the larger efforts that are going on in the land surface modeling universe, such as ILAM, or the Local Land Atmosphere Coupling Project, and also the CMIP-6 data sets, of which there are at least a couple of targeted experiments, MIPS, that are highly relevant to this area. And finally, that it's encouraged that the teams think about metrics to track the success of model improvements, and to think about integrating those metrics into leading diagnostic packages. So the PCMDI package, the ILAM package, or the MAPP Model Diagnostics Task Force package as well. So those are the basic parameters of the call and the requirements. I'll mention as for funding that we're expecting 1 to 2 projects to be funded out of this call, and the funding levels are $600,000 to $1 million per year for up to 3 years, and there's the possibility of a 2-year extension of the projects that is evaluated in the 2nd year of the first period. And I'd encourage you to contact Anna Rita, who's the manager for this competition, if you have questions about it from the NOAA and MAPP side, and contact Renew over at DOE if you have questions about DOE's involvement in the competition. So again, please submit any questions you have about that one, and we can handle them in the Q&A session. The second competition is focused on CMIP-6 and the projections coming out of that experiment. And the high-level scope of this competition is to develop integrated projections for the 21st century of the simulation of climate changes in the CMIP-6 experiments. There are a couple of other areas of this competition, including understanding and benchmarking whether models capture processes faithfully that can be translated into uncertainties and confidence levels for the projections. So diving a little bit more into the model performance and model formulation area. And then the third element is integrated with the Climate Assessment and U.S. Global Change Research Program indicators effort. So I'll spend a little bit of time on each of these 3 areas. The first area is, as I mentioned, focused on developing integrated projections. So this basically what we're looking for is for people to go beyond assessing changes in individual climatic quantities or phenomena. So, just looking at precipitation or temperature or sea ice, for example, and instead think about multivariate impacts on particular systems in particular regions or for particular applications as well. So this could be, for example, the impact of both heat waves and temperature as well as precipitation on drought occurrence, instead of just looking at the precipitation impact on drought or just the thermal impact on drought, looking at interconnected impacts on a particular phenomena and how the models simulate that. Priority area B is focused on getting down to the model level and trying to provide information on confidence or uncertainty of projections based upon the ability of models to simulate climate system processes effectively. So this can be remote and local controls, physical controls over sensible variables or integrated climate impacts in a particular region or globally. And the third area is focused on indicator development. There's a link to the indicator interagency U.S. Global Change Research Program indicator platform in the information sheet, and I encourage you to take a look at that. The indicators, to boil it down, are basically just graphs of various variables that are commonly tracked, things like greenhouse gas emissions, sea surface temperatures, et cetera. And there are two avenues that can be taken here. One is to either extend the existing indicators, which are all historical and observationally based, into the future using the projection data. Alternatively, it can be to develop entirely new indicators that have both an observational base as well as a projections base, and that go along with the integrated sense of this overall call. So not just single variate indicators, but integrated indicators as per the theme of the overall call. So of course, the proposal should heavily leverage the CMIP6 modeling experiments. So the diagram on the right shows many of the different MIPS in addition to the DEC experiments that could be used for these projects. We have a thematic emphasis. It's not a requirement, but we would certainly encourage proposals that are focused on the blue economy. This is a priority of the new administration at NOAA to look at the blue economy. So issues in ocean ecosystems and the physical ocean that affect the U.S.'s blue economy. And so we certainly encourage proposals in that area, although that's not a limiting focus of the competition itself. And let's see a few other things that we're looking for here. You can focus on more than one area, so you could do a combination of A and B or B and C. And it should just be very clear in the proposal the delineation between the tasks that are responsive to each portion of the call so that we can assess those clearly. So please be clear about what you're looking at if you are looking at more than one area of the competition. And we do encourage that you think about and try to integrate as much as possible relevance to the NOAA mission outside of the blue economy priorities. So that includes the line office priorities, as well as work that's going on at the laboratories on the projection information. So that's it for the two information sheets. I'll mention, I guess really quickly, the funding levels for this one. So there are two types of proposals. We are soliciting type 1 or smaller proposals that are funding up to $100K per year for 2 years and are focused on one or more of the type A, B, and C areas. And type 2 proposals are, we would fund potentially one of those, up to one of those. And the funding level on that is $250,000 to $300,000 per year for 2 years as well. The type 2 proposals would do science in addition to proposing to lead a task force of investigators constructed out of the successful proposals from this call. So the individuals who are funded from this call would be organized into a task force, and then the type 2 proposal could propose activities that could be done with that task force and propose leadership of the task force. And I encourage you to ask questions during the Q&A or email me if you have specific questions about the competition. So we're going to go into some background now about how to actually submit proposals to the call, and a little bit of background about the review process and the overall solicitation process. So every proposal is evaluated according to 4 criteria. 3 criteria are evaluated by a peer review expert panel, and that accounts for most of the score that's assigned to an individual proposal. That panel assesses the scientific and technical merit of the proposed work, the qualifications of the team, and the appropriateness of the budget. I'll just mention briefly on that last one that that kind of cuts both ways. Sometimes budgets score well because the proposal is requesting too much funding for too little work. That's kind of the obvious one. But the other way that proposals can score low on budget is to request too few funds for too much work. It kind of raises a question, usually in the panel's mind, of whether the work is accomplishable given the requested funding. So budgets should really just be well-tuned to the amount of work that's being proposed. In stage 2, we basically take the proposals from stage 1 and then evaluate the relevance to the program, to NOAA, and to the call. And this is a much smaller portion of the score. And then combining those two scores gives us a ranking, and we fund proposals in the rank order that comes out of the panels. Everything here is, of course, conditional on funding availability. If you look back over the last few years of MAPP competitions, generally our success rate is in the 25% range. Sometimes it's a little bit higher, but it's generally between a quarter and a third of applications are ultimately funded. And it usually takes a bit of time for us to be able to notify on decisions. The reason being because the last few years, in particular, the government budget process has been extremely slow, and the Climate Program Office and MAPP program haven't received budgets until pretty well into the spring, and we can't make funding decisions until we get that budget. So it does take some time, and if you do end up applying, please be patient with that. Feel free to send us an email if you want an update, but it usually does take until the spring until we're able to actually make decisions and start making the awards. Next slide, please. We have information about the call on our FFO website, so you can go to cpo.noaa.gov. You can find the federal funding opportunity as a PDF file, and then also the 2 information sheets for our 2 calls. And the FFO is a high-level document, talks about the overall opportunity for the Climate Program Office at large. It has a small amount of information about individual program priorities, but the information sheets contain the bulk of the information about what we're looking for in the competitions. The FFO is also published on grants.gov. The FFO is available there, and for non-federal applicants at universities, that's where you go to actually apply for funding. The FFO has a lot of information, as I mentioned, on eligibility criteria, deadlines, things that are expected in the letters of intent and in full applications, and then what to expect from the review process and some of the reporting requirement expectations, so post-award issues. Next slide, please. So the first step that I'll go into more detail on is the letter of intent process. This is something that the Climate Program Office does. Not every funding program does this. It's something that's more of an informal process that was implemented in this office, and it's intended really to help you all gauge whether the ideas that you have for a research project are relevant to the program and to the competition in our eyes. And so they're fairly brief letters, up to 2 pages, that basically lay out the idea for your proposal. And there are a few things that we ask for. These are all laid out in the FFO, but I'll go through it briefly. You should, of course, be clear about the competition that you're targeting. Give a tentative project title. It doesn't have to be a final title. It's great if you can carry that through to a proposal, but just some idea of the title. Give identifying information about individuals you think would be involved in the proposal. That doesn't have to be final either because it takes time to bring the teams together. We understand that, but some initial sense at least of who you think can be involved. Then the body of the LOI laying out a summary of the work, a statement of the problem that you're attacking, talk a little bit about the methodology, the data that you're going to use, give a sense of the cost. This is just the raw cost. It doesn't need to be a budget here, but just maybe an annual estimate of how much it'll cost at the high level. And then relevance as you see it to the competition that's targeted of the idea. We're doing this for the first time this year, but there's a link in the information sheets that goes to a Google form through which you can submit your LOI. We do ask that you try to use this form if possible, but it does require a Google-enabled account to do so. So, many universities and a number of federal agencies are all managed digitally by Google services. So I know this is not even a second thought on this for most of you. If you're willing to use your own personal Google account to submit your LOI, that would be great. It's not required. You can also send it to us by email. If you do use your personal Gmail account, we will not use that address for any communications or share it in any way. So it'll just be purely for the purpose of sending your LOI and submitting that. But I will say, if you use this Google form, it does help us start reviewing the LOIs more quickly and get back to you faster on the LOIs. So please do try to use the Google form if possible. What you'll hear back from us is a pretty high-level a bit of feedback on whether we encourage or discourage the proposal that you're suggesting you might submit. So if we encourage it, it means that we think it's basically on target and it seems like a good idea, it seems relevant, and we're encouraging you to submit a proposal. If we send you a more marginal letter, it means that there were some elements that seemed really promising and to hit the elements of the call and are highly relevant, but that it's maybe missing some other elements of relevance to the program or the call. And so in that case, you should go back to the information sheet and really, make sure that all of the elements of the information sheet are being followed and responded to in the letter of intent. If it's discouraged, it means that we felt it's not relevant to the competition or the program in this particular cycle. And we will get back to you by October 1st, so 3 weeks after you submit your LOI, with a response. Because it's such a brief period and we are expecting a lot of LOIs, we don't really have time to send a specific targeted assessment of exactly what we felt about the relevance or thoughts about the relevance. So you'll really have to just kind of take the high-level feedback and then go back and compare against the elements in the information sheet in the call. And I do want to be clear that this is only about relevance, so it's absolutely no judgment on the proposed science and the quality of the science or the quality of the team or the quality of the budget. It's only about whether we feel the proposal is relevant to the program and the call. And this is all intended to help you, to save you time from putting together an entire proposal that's perhaps not going to be found to be relevant to the competition or to the program. And I have gotten some emails from folks about whether ideas are relevant, and just because we do expect so much interest in this call, please try to just keep the questions to the LOI. Just submit an LOI. We'll get back to you with the process with some feedback about whether it seems relevant, and so try to keep your inquiries within the LOI process as much as possible. Okay. In terms of the full application, coming out of the LOI process, it's not a binding process. No matter what the feedback is from the LOI process, you can still submit a proposal, even if your proposal is discouraged. You can also submit a proposal if you don't have time to put an LOI together. It's still totally valid to submit an actual full application. And this slide is mostly just about the elements of the application. It's all in the FFO, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. But you should have a title page with all the budget information, institutional information, PIs listed for every institution on the title page. There should be an abstract, results from recent research projects, briefly summarized. Your statement of work, which is the bulk of the page length. A data and information sharing plan. This is a federal requirement that came down during the Obama administration that research results and the underlying data need to be maintained and shared for a period of time. So there's a request for how you're going to do that in the proposal. Budget information. This includes federal forms if you're submitting from a non-federal institution. CVs for yourself and all of the applicants. A description of your current and pending funding, figures and references, appendices as needed, and then a statement of diversity, inclusion, and broader impacts. That's described in the FFO, but basically we're looking to gain a sense of the kind of external elements of the project, the things that it contributes to increasing diversity and inclusion, and also any broader impacts that may come out of it. This isn't formally scored, but it is something that that the panels look at when they're evaluating the proposals. So it's great if you can add something to that section. I've already mentioned the first element here. If there are any sort of procedural questions like how to apply and where the FFO is located on grants.gov, please send those to Diane Brown, who's the head administrator for grants in our office. There is support for high-performance computing if you need it. We have some time on one of the NOAA supercomputers that we can provide to investigators. There's a sheet that you can submit as part of your application to request the HPC, so please take a look at that. And then I already mentioned the data sharing plan. I think that's it, maybe the final slide. Okay, so we're at the Q&A part now, and I see that there's already some questions coming in already, so please keep sending those in. Use the chat feature if possible to do it. And what we're going to do now is just kind of organize the questions in the background, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes to go through them in order. So give us a couple of minutes. We're going to have radio silence for a couple minutes here, and then we'll come back and answer your questions. So bear with us for a moment. Thank you. Okay, so we're back online. Anarita, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, hi. I don't know if you saw this, but I put a couple questions up top for you, if you can take those first.
Sure. I think somebody's asking where they can get a copy of the information sheet or including all the details. I think Dan already mentioned this. You can get those from the CPO website. And also the FFO, the full FFO is on Grants Online. Then there is another question about will the slides deck from this webinar be available? Yes, I believe we'll make these available through the MAPP website. Also, the recording of this webinar will be made available.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ana Rita. So we've got a lot of other questions. I'll try to run through these as quickly as possible. First question is, are DOE labs eligible for this call as PIs? Yes, definitely. There can be PIs from DOE labs. It's encouraged that there's involvement of both NOAA and DOE scientists on the proposal. But, you know, that has to be done with any rules about what type of federal funding can be received at the labs, especially for federal employees. So you'll have to work that out within the lab. In NOAA labs, federal employees do not receive federal funding. They can receive funding for travel, but oftentimes it's a request for a postdoc or something like that. So if you're asking specifically on the DOE side, I would, you know, contact Renew about that and also contact the lab about it in addition. There's a question for the CPT competition about the funding limit of $600,000 to $1 million, and it's whether that's from CPO MAPP as well as from DOE. So, you know, the project funding for that competition will be some combination of MAPP funding and DOE funding. The $600K to $1 million is the amount of funds that can be requested within one project for that project's activities. But it'll probably depend on the extent of the NOAA and the DOE involvement in the proposal in terms of what the funding split would be from the two agencies. Ana Rita, I think you were suggesting you could take this next question about the budget numbers for CPT.
No, I think you already addressed that, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just about the numbers not quite adding up, like if there's two projects, and basically, yes, it's going to depend on our appropriations as well as DOE appropriations and the level of interest from both and balancing that. There's a question about past CPT experience. Can you please describe the process by which modeling centers and academic institutions scope proposals? So, you know, I haven't been involved in the actual scoping process aside from the LOI process and the proposal and receiving the proposals. But I think the teams are constructed through organic connections between the academic community and the individuals at the modeling centers. In many cases, there are already existing natural links between these communities. If you're interested but not sure exactly who to contact at a modeling center, you could send me or Ana Rita an email and we could connect you with somebody, at least on the NOAA side. If it's on the DOE side, I'd encourage you to reach out to Renew. But I can't really go into much more detail than that about scoping the proposals because that's really the responsibility of the teams. But if this comment is a little bit seeking help, then please do reach out to us and we can try to create a connection. Ana Rita, I don't know if you want to take this one about the land process CPT competition requiring operational pathways.
Sure, I can do that. No, this CPT competition does not require an operational pathway. It is really sort of more foundational advancement in our ability to model, you know, a given land process and interaction with the rest of the Earth system. However, it would be great to see, you know, such, you know, new modeling capability go all the way to, you know, into an operational model, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, great. The next question is about whether there are links to information about past successful projects and how helpful they've been when they were implemented. So there is a lot of information out there about climate process teams and funding from NSF and other agencies for earlier climate process teams, so you could take a look at some of that information. On our website for the climate process teams that we've funded, at least a couple of them I think are starting to come to a close, and I'd have to go check, but we do publish final reports on our website, so it's possible that you could take a look at the funded projects section of the MAPP page and see if the report is available for those projects. They may also still be in no-cost extensions, though, even though they were funded quite a few years ago. So it's possible that the reports are not up yet. But I'd encourage you also, I think there's a workshop report from a workshop that was held early last fall up at GFDL and in Princeton. It was sponsored by Clivar, and we can post the link to that on our website on the webinar page for this discussion in case it's useful. But I think that report has useful information that talks about previous funding efforts and success and failures of CPTs and discusses the model at large. I hear Anna-Rita concurring, I think. I don't know if you want to
Yeah, and it's the link to the workshop report is on the inside it's linked into the information sheet for the CPT. So I definitely encourage you to see that and look at the presentations from that workshop and the achievements from past climate process teams. Okay,
perfect. Yeah, so that's great. So check out the information sheet then. Question about whether you can collaborate with other universities for this proposal. Definitely, I'm not sure which competition this is geared towards. The first competition on CPTs, that should definitely have multiple institutions on it. For the CMIP-6 one, absolutely you can collaborate. The funding level is a little bit lower, but yeah, absolutely. If there's some share that you'd like, another university to receive or some collaboration with somebody from another institution, absolutely. And of course, that competition as well can also have federal collaborations with NOAA centers or other federal institutions around the country. Next question, do both NOAA and DOE labs have to be involved in the CPTs? We are looking for involvement of the NOAA and DOE labs. And there's an extension of this question about NCAR and NOAA combinations, and that's also, allowable. I think, as I described, other modeling centers outside of NOAA and DOE can participate as well. Anna-Rita, did you want to add anything to this particular question?
No, I think you said it right, and I would say that it will be, we must have collaborations from NOAA, OER, and DOE labs to ensure there is a really strong connections with model development in those centers. But we are definitely interested in involvement of other U.S. climate modeling centers as well.
Yeah. There's a question asking for some explanation of the term blue economy, which is the current administration's focus. So I can't go into too much detail on that here. I'd encourage you to look up presentations and documentation on the NOAA website from Rear Admiral Gallaudet, who is the acting administrator of NOAA. He's spoken about this at length in a number of different venues. But basically, the blue economy refers primarily to the fisheries and the health of the associated ecosystems. But it can also extend to coastal effects as well, things like sea level rise and how those affect coastal communities. And there's also the opportunity there for integrated effects where you may have impacts on both fisheries and on working waterfronts as well that can sort of magnify the net effect on some of these communities that are heavily dependent upon fisheries along the coastline. And there's also some links in the information sheet that point to information about the blue economy as well. So I encourage you to check that out. There's a question about Cordex for the CMIP-6 call. In the figure, one of the MIPs that's listed is Cordex. So there's a question here about whether you can leverage the North American Cordex simulations with the other CMIP-6 simulations for proposed work. And that's fine. The focus should just be on CMIP-6 era data, so not past Cordex work like NARCAP would not be as relevant, but more recent Cordex work would be relevant, and any of the other CMIP-6 simulations as well. And there is the possibility of having a regional focus in that competition. So downscale data sets are certainly relevant to that. It's a question about about NASA partners and receiving funding. So with NASA, it's the same thing as I mentioned earlier. In general, federal employees can't receive funding, but we do fund NASA centers, usually for contractors or travel or other non-federal expenses. So certainly NASA investigators are eligible for this competition. This question, what is the role of DOE in Target 1? What DOE model is used by NOAA services, I guess? I think I've laid out the role of DOE in terms of from a technical level and a funding level, especially based on some of the other questions. In terms of this question about what DOE model is used by a NOAA service, there isn't a DOE model used by a NOAA service, but there are routines from DOE-funded models that are utilized in NOAA modeling packages and modeling systems, and this competition is co-supported by the Department of Energy, so it's relevant both to NOAA as well as to DOE, whether NOAA is consuming DOE modeling systems explicitly or not. And as I mentioned with the climate process teams, a core element of that is the hope that routines that are developed through that work can be extensible to multiple different modeling platforms so that the different modeling centers can learn from each other and have some information technology transfer as well as part of the project. The rest of these questions I haven't looked at yet, so we'll just kind of wing them, I guess. This question, if the NOAA Cooperative Science Centers would like to submit a proposal, would they be encouraged to submit one with NOAA federal collaborators as the lead PIs, or the academic partners can also be the lead PIs? Yeah, I mean, generally non-NOAA or non-federal PIs will take the lead on the proposals and have a collaborator from NOAA as part of the project. So certainly, you know, individuals from NOAA or outside are encouraged to take the lead. The general practice, though, is that non-federal PIs from a university or other institution will take the lead on a project. And I hope I'm answering this adequately. You can send me an email if I'm not quite on point with this question. I think Anna Rita is going to handle the next question.
Yeah, so the next question is, I think it relates to the climate process team competition. It asks, considering that this program is very competitive, like only 1 or 2 proposals may be funded, which has not been the case in the past, what is your suggestion? Is it really worth putting together a proposal? So I would say that there are a lot of requirements that go with the climate process team competition. It's a large team, again, a lot of requirements. So if you think you meet all of them and you have good ideas, this is not something that many people will be able to do. So it's really up to you to judge whether you want to go for it. But what we're saying is that we think, you know, given the requirements and the collaborations that are needed and the scope of the proposals that we envision, you know, if you have a good idea and you think you can meet all those requirements, you may want to consider going for it.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna Rita. There's a question here, how many institutions are allowed to team up for the CPT competition? Are there any limits on number of collaborators, minimum or max? There's no limit to the number of institutions or collaborators, so you know the funding levels can be kind of dynamic depending upon the number of institutions and the amount of effort at those particular institutions. And I would envision, given the funding level and the nature of CPTs, that there could be quite a few institutions on those proposals. We funded slightly smaller CPTs previously, and those ones involved 5 to 10 institutions. So, you know, it can be on that order or larger potentially. Next question, is collaboration with NOAA scientists required or encouraged if the PI is from a university? So on competition 1, the CPT, we do ask that there's collaboration with NOAA scientists, especially at the modeling centers. But on competition 2 for CMIP 6, it's not a requirement that there be a NOAA scientist on the proposal. Although, you know, I'll just say in general that this is, you know, NOAA is a very mission-driven agency. The reason we have an external grants program is ultimately to advance NOAA capabilities, products, services, all of that. So, really thinking about the relevance to NOAA, and part of that is, engaging people at NOAA. That can definitely help proposals in terms of relevance, but it's not a requirement, and we've funded proposals that do not have NOAA collaborations or clear immediate benefit to the agency in the past. This question, proposers should expect to refine and adjust their proposed methodologies and objectives via interactions with the indicator working group, but this person said that the contact can't be found. So I'm the contact for that. You can reach out to me. It is just in the information sheet, it is listed that I'm the MAPP Competition Manager and Assessments Program Point of Contact. It's a little obscure, but it's at the bottom of the 4th page of the CMIP 6 competition. But anyhow, any questions about the assessment element or the indicators element, just reach out to me, and I can work with you on that. Okay, so I think that's it in terms of the questions. I don't know if Anna-Rita wants to add anything else at the end here.
Not really. Thanks, Ben. I think I think we're done. Yeah.
Okay, great. So thanks everyone for joining. I think we had a pretty big crowd for this, and we really appreciate you taking the time and that you have the interest in the competitions and the program. Feel free to reach out to any of us with further questions, and we look forward to seeing your LOIs and getting back to you about them. So thanks, and have a great rest of your day.